What's up guys, back for another Honkai Star World video, and in this video I'm going to tell you guys what is the best 5-star to pick from the 5-star selector that is going to be coming out in 2.7 in just a few more days. Now obviously if you are missing some of the characters and you would like to just collect them all, there is absolutely no shame in grabbing a character you're missing, even if it is one of the not so good 5 stars out of the group, right? I do think that that is completely okay, right? However, there are some that are just outright better to pick, especially if you don't have them. And there's one character in particular that if you don't have them, you 100% should pick them up, as they will help your account a ton. But let's just jump into it, right? So first things first, how we're going to go about this video, right, is we are going to briefly explain what a character does. Most of the time when I go over a character's kit, I'll pull it up and go over it fully, but considering how there's a total of 7 characters here, I think that would take quite a bit of time. So I want to briefly go over the character, and then we'll talk about, you know, how you use them, if there's a better option than them, and then we'll go from there. So first things first, let's start off with Bailu. Now the reason we're starting off with Bailu is because Bailu is in an interesting place, at least in my opinion, right? Now Bailu pretty much is going to just be a healer for you, right? Now Bailu can heal on the skill, and then it has a bounce skill, so you'd heal one character and then it would bounce to a second and then a third character. Then with Bailu's ultimate, it is an AoE heal, but the main thing about this is that you get invigoration. Invigoration is pretty much when you get hit, you heal, right? So that's pretty damn good. In fact, most of the time, if you have a pretty built Bailu, if you are getting attacked by, let's say, someone like Hule, you're pretty much just healing over and over, and you're not immortal, but the healing is actually extremely good. Plus, Bailu also has a revive. So I'd be thinking, okay, if Bailu's a healer that has heal on hit, has a revive, and even has damage reduction. Yes, when you are invigorated, meaning you have the buff where if you get hit you heal, you take 10% less damage. You might be wondering, why is Bailu so bad? Why would no one run her? Well, that's because Bailu doesn't have a cleanse, meaning if you get CC'd whatsoever, you're screwed, right? And CC is such a game ender most of the time, especially if you get hit on your DPS, or heck, even Bailu herself gets CC'd, then you're screwed. You have no way of healing, and that is a huge L for Bailu. Otherwise, I'd say Bailu is probably one of the better healers just based off how her heal actually works. But unfortunately, since she doesn't have a cleanse, she's gonna get knocked down a bit, and you know, not being unusable, but considering Natasha has a cleanse, Lynx has a cleanse, Gallagher has a cleanse, literally every other healer has a cleanse, it's not looking too good for Bailu, right? Now Bailu unfortunately was outclassed pretty quickly by the release of Zwocha, who I believe dropped the 4th banner, right? Second half of 1.1, and pretty much just killed off Bailu instantly, right? Now, I do think Bailu is a better healer than Lynx and Natasha, but you have to be very careful with CC, and if you have a character who can cleanse on the team as well, then that is a big W. Overall, I don't think Bailu is a great pickup though, just because without a cleanse, she's really just not finding any use, but her healing abilities are pretty good. So if you're running her in, let's say, simulated universe where you can have a buff to where if you heal yourself, you cleanse, she actually can be quite usable there, but otherwise, not really a good pickup, right? And pretty much has been replaced by every single healer that has come out since her release. And that's rough, right? Next up, we are going to talk about Clara. Now, Clara is a 5-star, oh, by the way, if I didn't mention, 5-star abundance lightning character for Bailu, right? Clara is a 5-star physical destruction character. Now, Clara is pretty damn cool because her whole gimmick is when she is hit, she counterattacks. Now, this counterattack is a follow-up attack as well, so she can take advantage of follow-up attacks. And then her ultimate makes it to where you have a great chance to be attacked, and if your ally is attacked instead, you will still counter, which is pretty nice because if Clara doesn't get hit, then she's basically a dead unit. You're not really using Clara for her insane skill AoE damage. You're using her because of her counter, right? Now, a few issues that I have with Clara. She's definitely one of the better standard characters on this list that you can pick, but she does have a few issues, right? One of those is if you get hit a little too much, then Clara can, obviously get knocked out, and then you're screwed. You don't have her anymore, right? Another issue I have with her is her taunt is not guaranteed. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because, unfortunately for Clara's sake, we have quite literally her buffed version, I guess. Like, if you were to take a character and give them buffs such as, Dokkan has easy A's, trying to think of another gacha game besides Dokkan and like a Dragon Ball gacha game, because those are the first ones that come to mind are Zenkai's and Legends and Easy A's and Dokkan. I know Grand Cross has like Holy Relics, so like that. Pretty much just a buff to a unit, right? You would look at Yunli's kit and be like, that is like a buffed version of Clara. Like, she's already a 5-star, but like if she was a 4-star, you'd be like, that's 5-star Clara's kit. Yeah. So Yunli pretty much just does everything she does, but better. And pretty much the issues I have with Clara's kit are on Yunli. Yunli has a heal on her skill. Her taunt from her ultimate is guaranteed to go off. Granted, it's only for the one hit, but it's still guaranteed, which is pretty nice. Clara's damage also has gone a bit lower, obviously since release, because new enemies are tankier, have more HP. Clara's damage, while going up because we have new units, new relics, all that good stuff, isn't insane, but she's still a good solid unit. I definitely think she's probably going to be ranked pretty high on this. I'll have a list at the very end of the video where I'm ranking all of the 5-stars at the end. So if you're going through this and you still don't have a good idea of who you're picking, at the very end we'll have a list of who you should go through, and I'll give a few scenarios as well. But Clara is still a solid DPS. You have to keep in mind that if you have no way of healing her instantly, she could take a bit too much damage. So having someone like, Linxia, who has like a backup heal, Aventurian for shields, also works pretty well. That could be very helpful for her. Next up, we have good old, the GOAT. The GOAT, really, Gepard, right? Now, Gepard is a 5-star preservation ice character. Now, what makes Gepard pretty cool is because, for some reason, Hoyo has this weird agenda with not releasing shield units. Now, Gepard has a skill that also can freeze the enemy, which is pretty damn nice, right? Not only is that counting as a debuff for characters, it's also in boosting certain characters' damage who just want want characters to be frozen, right? Talk about a different ice character that I'm going to talk about later once that. But anyway, Gepard's ultimate applies a shield to all allies as well, and it's a pretty beefy shield. And then when struck with a killing blow, Gepard also revives himself, which is interesting because he would normally be the tankiest unit on the team because he's a shielder and you build him with defense for his shield. But I mean, hey, if for some reason he goes down, I mean, you guess you get a revive. That's pretty cool, I guess. Yeah, and when his revive is triggered, he gets his ultimate back. I mean, that's pretty cool. He also has a higher chance of being attacked by enemies in his kit as well, which is pretty cool. That does help him out. One main issue with Gepard, while being one of the few units to actually apply his shield, because like I said, for some reason they just don't like doing that, his only way of applying his shield is through his ultimate, and his ultimate isn't going to be highly spammable unless you're skilling every turn and then you're like ting-ying him and all this extra stuff. It is a bit rough. It is only 100 max energy for his ultimate, but you're probably going to get caught out either taking damage or just not having ult when your shield runs out, so that is something to consider. Plus, Aventurian is by far the better version of Gepard. Not only does Aventurian do quite a bit more damage than Gepard, he also has a shield on his skill, which is easily more accessible than Gepard. Obviously, if you don't have Aventurian, your only real options for shields is Gepard, because the only other character is actually March 7th, and hers is only one character, and it also increases their likelihood, of being attacked, which is not really what you'd want if March is your only form of sustain, because the second they break the shield, you're probably going to be at low HP. So it's a bit rough. There's not really a lot of options, but considering Gepard's other option is like one of the best units in the game, that does hurt him quite a bit. Plus his ult uptime, you know, having to spam it so much is going to be a bit rough. But I mean, hey, him being one of the only options for a shielder is definitely going to give him some points on here. But he's also not too crazy in my opinion, honestly, right? So he's going to be down a little bit. Then we have good old Yanqing. Now this one's going to hurt. Yanqing is a 5-star ice hunt character. Probably my favorite character out of the standard banner bunch, at least character-wise, animation-wise, usage-wise. Oh, good lord. So Yanqing's whole thing is when you use his skill, he gets Steel Seal Sync, right? Now, when you use his ultimate, he gives himself 60 crit rate. When Steel Seal Sync from the skill is active, you get an extra 50% crit damage. This buff lasts for 1 turn. Afterwards, you get a big, attack off with Yanqing. Thankfully, he does give himself the crit rate and the crit damage before he attacks, right? So you're expecting, that sounds pretty good. But wait, there's more. When Steel Seal Sync from using your skills active, Yanqing is less likely to be attacked. Yanqing's crit rate is increased by 20% and his crit damage increases by 30%. Meaning when you ult, you get 80% crit rate and 80% crit damage. Good lord, that's literally all the crit rate you really need to crit most of the time, right? That's more than some of the units I have built. After Yanqing attacks, there's also a 60% chance to do a follow-up attack with a 65% base chance to freeze. Like, that sounds pretty busted. But wait, there's more. When you crit with Yanqing, you get a speed boost. He also gets effect res when you have his Steel Seal Sync. And if he attacks an enemy with an ice weakness, he does more damage. Pretty good. That sounds like a pretty solid kit. Well, with all that, you build him with a ton of crit damage. He's got over 100% crit rate. He goes absolutely crazy. You do 5 damage. Yeah, his damage is atrociously bad. It's insane. He has such a good kit on paper, but then you use him and he does no damage. Plus, if you get hit at all, your Soul Steel Sync is gone, and you'd have to then be able to skill yet again. So the only real way to run him is with a shielder, which for the longest time was only a Gepard. Which, I mean, hey, there's some synergy there. Gepard, freezes enemies. One of Yanqing's dupe is when they're frozen, they take more damage, which is pretty nice, I guess. But, if you don't have Gepard ult up constantly, he's going to be exposed to be taking damage, especially from AoEs. The only real way to run him was when Aventurine came out and just had this gigantic, like, you're never getting through the shield, and still that really didn't save Yanqing. Unfortunately for him, Yanqing was pretty much replaced by just existing by Zele being a thing. He was pretty good for the MOC cheese back in the day, where you pretty much freeze the enemy and we didn't really have too much to go off of. But now you could really just run any character and they're probably going to perform better than Yanqing, so he's definitely going to be at the very, very bottom of the list at the end of the video. It's so sad. He is such a cool character, but good lord, his damage is just so atrocious, right? Next up on the list is good old Bronya. Now, Bronya is an interesting one because I had a pretty solid spot for her on the list, but she has her direct competition in Sunday, right? Now, Bronya with her skill dispels a debuff and increases the allies' damage by 66% and also action advances them by 100%. Meaning, you pretty much give them a damage buff, cleanse them, and then they get to attack again, right? Then with her ultimate, she increases the attack of all allies and their crit damage. That's pretty good, right? Then, as well, when you get to her bonus traces, when she's on the field, you get a damage buff, and then she also gives you a defense buff for 2 turns. This sounds pretty damn good because not only are you getting crit damage and attack, you're also getting damage dealt, you're getting a debuff, dispelled, all this good stuff. Bronya seems pretty good. Now, what is the killer for her? And that is the fact that Sunday, a unit who is going to be out when you get this ticket, is quite literally her but better. He gives energy, he gives crit rate, One thing with Bronya is that when you're spamming her skill, because you want her to be fast, because you want her to skill, so as many times as possible, so your DPS can get, you know, as many attacks in as possible, or you want to do the -1 speed strat. That's another thing with the action advance unit, is speed tuning is rather annoying to do. So I understand why a lot of people don't do it, but regardless, Sunday doesn't have a skill point issue, and it's pretty much just obvious that we're getting into another Clara situation where Yunli is just everything Clara needed and more, and Sunday is everything Bronya needed and more. So she does get knocked down a bit. She's still one of the better units to pick on this list, but man, dropping the ticket with Sunday to where like, oh, let me do my Sunday summons. Oh, hey, I pulled Sunday. Okay, well, I'm not picking Bronya now is kind of funny, but yeah, it's rough. It's rough for Bronya. She's still an absolutely fantastic unit, and some of her dupes are pretty good. Her E1 is actually a 50% chance to not use a skill point when you use her skill point. So if you like gambling, I mean, you're playing a gacha game, you can bank on that. That's pretty cool, I guess, right? But yeah, it is very funny that Sunday is just her direct upgrade, right? All right, so next up on the list is going to be the GOAT Welt. Yes, the absolute GOAT. Now, the funny thing about Welt is he actually doesn't really have a clear replacement, right? Now, with Welt, he is a 5-star imaginary nihility character, and I'm pretty sure when the game dropped, he was the only nihility character. Or, sorry, not nihility. Yeah. What are we saying? He was the only imaginary character. Unless I'm forgetting something. I don't think so. I think Yukong was the second one, and then we got Luocha and Danheng. Yeah. Welt was the only imaginary character, which was very confusing to me because I was like, oh, they have an imaginary weakness. I'm like, damn, if you don't have Welt, you just can't do anything about it. Obviously, they have more than one weakness, right? But it's just really funny that Welt was the only imaginary character, right? Now, what's cool about Welt is when Welt uses his skill, there's a base chance to reduce the enemy's speed, right? Then when you ult, you can actually imprison the enemy, which is going to be the imaginary weakness break effect. And when they're in prison, they have their actions delayed by 40% and their speed reduced again. So what people were doing with Welt is pretty much running sustainless, and you'd pretty much just lower the enemy's speed and lower their actions over and over, so they would never get a chance to hit you. And that worked out pretty well. Welt also can do a decent amount of damage, nothing crazy, but I mean, his DPS options are there. The thing about Welt is you aren't really using him too much anymore. His damage is like nowadays, and the whole speed lowering is like whatever. The enemies are so fast anyway, they don't really care, and you're probably still gonna get hit right after anyway. But Welt doesn't really have a character who does what he does but better, so it's also going to be a very interesting position for him because of that. So you can really have some niches for Welt, but unfortunately at the moment there is no real niche for him at the moment. There's no enemy that you're like, oh, if I just lowered his speed, then it would ruin his whole flow, or if I could imprison him. Plus, a lot of enemies are resistant to like imprisonment or whatnot off rip, right? Same with being frozen and whatnot. So that is kind of annoying. Even if he does have a good spot in a fight, if the enemy just also happens to be an enemy that is resistant or immune to imprisonment, then, well, it kind of has no use, right? Because you're not running him for his damage. But like I said, he does not have a replacement, so I mean, hey, W well, right? Then last but definitely not least, we have Himeko. Now, Himeko is in an interesting spot because when the game dropped, she was probably going to be the worst 5-star to get, and now, spoiler, she is by far the best, right? Now, how Himeko works is her basic attack and her skill and her ultimate are whatever, right? It's just basic attack, one target, skill is single target, and then it does damage to the enemies on the left and right. And then her ultimate is AoE, and you get extra energy if you KO an enemy. None of that matters. The main reason you're using Himeko is when an enemy is weakness broken, you gain 1 stack. At 3 stacks, she launches a follow-up attack, right? Now, unfortunately, if you break multiple characters while doing this, it does not overstack like Adventurians, which is very, very unfortunate. I do wish they'd like shadow buff her to fix that. At least let me go to 4 out of 3 points, right? But at 3 points, she launches a follow-up attack, right? Now, when you are fighting a elite boss, right, which are the bigger enemies, you get all 3 stacks at once, which is pretty nice, right? Now, you might be wondering, why does this make her so good? Well, if you are fighting a group of enemies and you happen to get the last stack off, let's say by breaking one enemy, then she does a follow-up attack and she breaks two enemies, then you're at a 2 out of 3. Then your next character goes, you break the third one, and you get another follow-up attack. This allows you to almost spam her follow-up attack talent over and over and over, which results in more damage. Especially with the Super Break team, Himeko has pretty much been revived from the depths of uselessness, which is crazy because she was by far just like, oh, not unusable, but really bad. And now she's by far one of the best characters that you can have in Starl at the moment, right? Not saying she's like, you know, top 3 best DPS or anything, but she's a lot more runnable than a lot of the other characters that came out after the game's release, which is pretty funny to say, because if you time travel and you ask anybody who was playing Starl on day 1 or week 1 or week 2 or month 1, and you'd say, yeah, Himiko's the best standard banner character in the future, they go, did they buff her? Is there like a light cone that is only for Himeko that boosts her stats by like 5 million, or like what are we talking, right? But yeah, it's true, Himeko is insane. I love using her on Super Break. In Pure Fiction, she absolutely clears house. It's actually insane, right? Now, up on the screen, hopefully Editing Me has edited it to look rather good. You are going to see a tier list, probably right about now, maybe. Yeah, so we are going to rank the characters and how useful they are. Right now, obviously, we went over the characters. What are some good replacements for them? Do they have alternatives and whatnot? But now is the full-on ranking. So, number 1 is going to be Himeko. There's probably going to be me fixing this, as I decided I'm just going to pull it up right now as I'm speaking. Yep, let's go. So there's 7 characters. Come on now, we need 2 more slots. You know, you'd think I'd be a little bit more prepared for this part of the video, as you know, it is what it is, right? But anyway, Himeko is going to be number 1 by far. Like, if we're being realistic, there's going to be like this. It's going to look like this. There's going to be a gap. Himeko is by far the best pick if you don't have her, right? Now, obviously, if we're talking about dupes, this is going to be a bit more of a case-by-case basis, so it's kind of hard to really, you know, factor in that. If you aren't too sure, let me know in the comments and I'll help you out the best I can. I'm sure others will also try to help you out, and we can go from there. But Himeko, if you don't have her, by far the best option. Then it's going to be Bronya. Bronya is still really good. Now, if you're summoning for Sunday, she's going to lose a bit of value. Do keep in mind, you probably aren't going to use Bronya over Sunday unless you're using her for your second teams, but Bronya is still a very good support. Then next up is going to be Clara. Her damage is still good, and you know, she technically is somewhat of not a real sustain, but she helps keep your teams alive because they're going to target her most of the time instead of your other characters, which is actually pretty damn nice, right? Then in 4th is going to be good old Gepard. Shields is really good. Shields are really good. He has some use with the freeze, especially for characters like Acheron, so he has a bit more use than his other sustain 5-star standard character, Bailu, right? Then next up is going to be Welt. Very niche uses, but I mean, hey, he doesn't really have an alternative, so he gets a little bit of points, right? Then is going to be Bailu. Not having the cleanse really kills her, otherwise, very solid healer. And then last but not least, just kidding, I lied to you. He's absolutely just throw up in my mouth. Disgusting, bad unit. It's Yanqing. I've literally given this guy like ratios like come. An insanely good relic set. Adventuring E1, we have like E3 Bronya, we have Robin, we have everything aligned. Enemy is frozen. This guy's E4 on my account. We hit the ult, and good lord, I swear I've seen Herta skill some Pure Fiction enemies and hit like 5 times harder. Actually, so tragic, bro. What did they do to Yanqing? Give this man either a new 5-star or like easy A him like some Dokkan Battle type beat. Please, for the love of God, I'm begging you. Anyway, this is pretty much the list right here. You know, it's just, obviously this is my opinion. So the only ones I feel like people can really argue is probably switching Clara up to 2 and Bronya to 3, or maybe Gepard can go up as well, but I feel like this is pretty much going to be the consensus for most players, or most people who are going to be like, okay, what's the best character to pick? But anyway, that'll be it for the video. Let me know what you guys are picking in the comments as well. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in good old 2.7, where me personally, I'm getting my E4 Bronya for the funny follow-up tag team, and we'll probably do a video on that. But otherwise, like I said, thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all next time.